I have been honest enough to say, if the anti-religious left, and the left is anti-religious, from Lenin to Soros, if the left had produced kind, intelligent, wise people, my religious beliefs would have been challenged. I fully acknowledge it, because I judge ideologies by their product. And that's why I don't judge people's theology or philosophy. But the left is wrong on everything, ruins everything, and most of them aren't nice. I'm not talking liberals. You know, I make a distinction. Liberals are weak, but they're not bad.
What's going on, everyone? Sauce Ken here today, and we'll be analyzing the stereotypes that liberals have of Black America, Black Americans. And I always found these stereotypes distasteful, and I like to open up the intro with Dennis Prager, and I think he spoke some wise words of wisdom, that you judge people's ideology on the results that it produce. If you have a theory and reality shows you your theory is wrong, you must accept your theory is wrong. Or in this case, your theory is racist. Now, right? And I want to get into this video where, you know, this man versus street. He's going to talk to presumably white liberals in universities. You know, universities, liberal ideology runs that place. So I don't want to hear people in my comment section talking about it's both sides. There's no both sides in this. Liberals are the biggest perpetrators of stereotypes, right? Conservatives may also be opened up to that, but conservatives don't judge people based on their skin color. If you fail a math test, a conservative said, hey, you failed the math test. You probably didn't study. Your math is probably not your best subject. You need to study more. If a liberal hear a black person fail a math test, they'll say their test is racist. Oh, it's not your fault. The test wasn't constructed for black people, insinuating that, you know, you have to treat black people differently. You got to treat black people like retarded children in the class. But, you know, I digress. Let's get into the video. And then throughout the video, I'll give you some of my thoughts throughout. Let's take a look.
Do you think voter ID laws are racist?
I think so.
Most of the motivation behind them being put into place is rooted in racism.
I think voter ID laws are inherently discriminatory. When you look, the vast majority of people who do not currently have IDs are people of color.
That's an assumption that he can't prove, but he thinks it, right? That's what college taught him. Oh, that's the assumption you're supposed to have. Voter ID law is meant to discriminate against non-American citizens. It's meant to prevent illegal immigrants, people who are not American citizens, from voting. Is that fair? Yes or no? I believe people who live in my house has a say on what goes on in my house. But if you don't live in my house, you don't have a say what goes into my house, because it don't affect you. Right? If you decide, hey, let's raise taxes, and you're here illegally, you're getting paid under the table, you're not going to get any increase in taxes. But then you get to reap the benefits of that. That don't seem fair to me. All right. And this is the problem that like a lot of liberals have. They like to try to create an imagination of what they think is going on. And I honestly believe a lot of liberals and people on the left, they live in La La Land. They live in the world of their imagination. They're more frightened of their own imagination than from the reality of things. And the reality is Republicans just don't want non-American citizens to vote. That's the reason for the voting law. Because if you look at the Georgia law, the results, right? We're not going by imagination. We're going by the results. There was record turnout in the black vote in Georgia, but it was supposed to be voter suppression. Only interested in creating narratives. I digress. Let's get back into it.
You have an ID?
Absolutely.
Can you show us?
Yeah.
What do you have to say to all the people that say black Americans can't get voter ID?
I don't even know why they would say that. We can get the same things that every other American can get. That doesn't even make sense to me.
Republicans are just trying to make it really fucking hard for minorities to vote.
Why do they do that?
Because they hate black people. They fucking hate black people, and they're racist.
The black population is like historically much more financially disadvantaged.
Today we can sometimes see that sort of continuation of racism through our voting system in education and things like that. And typically people who are less educated are less likely to vote.
See, when they project and they say, oh, conservatives just have talking points. No, they have talking points. They didn't show no proof, no evidence, no examples of this stuff happening. They just said, oh, these are blather a bunch of stuff, and they expect you to be true, right? They don't tell you about in the 1890s, right? One generation removed from slavery, you had ex-slaves dying millionaires. Black people are they're creating their own businesses, the Negro Business League, if you want proof of that, right? They're creating their own hotels, their own businesses, their own economy. They're doing the parallel economy that conservatives are trying to do right now in this liberal, corporatist dominated society that we live in. Black people were graduating college more in the 1920s, 40s, before the 1960s. Black people were graduating college at a higher rate than black people today in 2023. Yet we live in an America that's less racist than it was in the 1960s. Yet black people are doing worse from a cultural, societal, hell, in some cases you can even say economic perspective than they are today. What changed? They bought into the liberal narrative. They turn to the liberal. They accept the liberal policies of welfare, disconnecting income from your work, income from your labor, and now they became helpless. The black community has been conditioned to perceive their race as a fixed outcomes are tied to their race, right? Instead of having a growth mindset that the black community used to have in the 1890s, they have a fixed mindset, and that fixed mindset is based on race. They teach things like critical race theory in college and in high schools, and they try to hide the concept, but these concepts still exist. You're helpless because of your skin color. White people are the biggest obstacle in your life, and as long as they don't help you, you can do nothing about it. Black powerlessness, because of your skin color, you're powerless. You're powerless to change the situations and things that affect you, to the point where if Republicans create a law that's supposed to filter out non-American citizens, non-American people from voting, that somehow is going to hurt black people because black people don't have the capacity to learn and adapt to changing circumstances in society. Imagine that. But conservatives get called racist because we want to hold black people to the same standard as everyone else. That if a black person fails the test, it's because of his ability, not because of his skin color. While the liberals, the leftists, will say, no, it's because of the test. We didn't make the test to cater to black people. That's why they failed. My skin color is not a handicap. And no one in this world, no one in the comment section will ever make me believe that. Period, as my dad will say. Let's get back into the video.
Unfortunately, making people who don't have IDs, which are usually people of color, have to go out and pay to vote, which is going to disencourage a lot of those people from voting.
Do you have an ID?
I do,
Can you show us your ID?
for sure.
What would you say to all the people that say black Americans can't get voter ID?
Seek help. I mean, in America, the legacy of white supremacy, of perpetuating negative stereotypes for black and brown bodies, that's why they would think like that, but...
That's black fragility in my eyes. But my thinking is that it feeds into this narrative that liberals want to feel like they can make a difference, right? And the biggest way you can make a difference is to support somebody or just to provide good information, accurate information, right? But it seems like they want to be the leaders, and it's like trying to find problems that don't exist and try to blame things that had nothing to do with you, right? Like this lady here, she just sprouted out a bunch of victimhood Olympic talking points. Oh, white supremacy, the system of white supremacy. But then if you showed her evidence, hey, look, Asians doing pretty well here. So how are you going to say the system is about white supremacy if white people are at the bottom statistically against Asians? Oh, they're white passing, right? They try to find some excuse, right? And this is another element of critical race theory, right? But the people who she would claim to be her allies are the biggest ones pushing this stereotype about black people are too dumb to use computers, too dumb to get voter ID. But they never ask themselves, damn, how do black people drive cars if they don't have a driver's license? If they don't have ID, if they don't have identification, how are they able to drive, get jobs, go to school? They don't ask themselves this question, but for some reason they think, oh yeah, poor blacks are unable to do anything in this country. It's exaggerated. The amount of poverty, the amount of struggle that black Americans face in America today is exaggerated. That's just my view, right? Racism exists. Yes, it does at a personal level. But the minute you try to get to institutions, systematic, you're going to have to prove it to me. Show me a law or a policy that discriminate me solely on my skin color. That says, hey, black people can't do X. Black people are not allowed to have this major. Show me that, and I'll agree with you that systematic racism is the thing. But if you can't show me that, then what all you're telling me is that you're letting the idea of racism hold you back and stop you from actually being successful in this world. Because you can't control what happens to you. You can only control how you respond. I digress. Let's get back into the video.
It's 2023, man, almost 2024. It's time to seek help for that.
So do you think voter ID laws suppress the African American vote?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Why?
they might like require like a specific type of ID. Like when I had to get a new passport, it was like over $100. So that definitely also like roots out the lower classes like in general.
They're not going to want to vote if they have to go spend all that money to be able to do so.
Let me ask you a question. If I wanted to burst the liberal bubble, who's more poor? White people or black people? Everyone's going to think black people, but the reality is white people. There's more poor white people than poor black people. Of course, there's a majority white country, Kenny. Okay, so wouldn't this rule change where you say, oh, they got to pay $100 to get a new ID, and a lot of black people don't have that money. But if most of the poor people in America are white, wouldn't this affect white people? But somehow you're making it about black people. This is almost as racist or as condescending as Biden's speech about poor kids are just as smart as white kids, insinuating that white people can't be poor.
A lot of minorities are suffering from poverty. When you make people pay money to get IDs, a lot of times people just won't vote. They won't think it's worth it. They don't have the extra money to spend, Yeah, they're not going to put like the couple dollars that they have into voting for somebody who's probably not even going to help them out.
Do you have an ID?
Yes, I do.
Can you show us your ID? Perfect. What do you have to say to all the people that say that black Americans can't get voter ID?
Well, I think it's pretty stupid. Like we're in a country where all of us are majority educated and we have the resources at our hands and our disposal to easily find these things. So I think anybody saying that is just dumb. Like,
exactly.
It's a really ignorant and stupid thing to say.
When you judge things based on the merit of what someone says, it's clear and simple how people are going to call it out. But the minute you reveal, oh, liberals say this, now they want to add context. Oh, well, there needs to be some context about that. And they start shuffling. They try to, massage the messaging. For instance, if someone just told you a quote, hey, Trump said that if you don't vote for me, then you ain't black. People will be like, oh, my God, Trump's racist. I knew Trump was racist. Oh, no. Then you reveal, oh, I lied. It was Joe Biden, actually. Oh, well, he didn't mean it like that. Historically, black people always been kind of voting Democrat. People start shuffling. People start making excuses for it, the behavior. Right? This is how tribal our politics has become. Right? We tribal based on our identities, aka, race. If a black man says something, it's not racist. But if a white man said the exact parallel of what that black man said, oh, my son, you want everyone to cry foul.
Why do you think it's so much harder for black Americans to obtain voter ID?
It's generally the history of racism. Like, we say we fixed it, but the system was basically built from the ground up in racism.
Do you think it suppresses the African American vote?
Yes, I do.
Why?
In the past, we've seen, African Americans being given like tests that have nothing to do with what voting is about, just in order to obtain a voting license or voter identification. So I think that that's something that we're still seeing remnants of today.
What do you have to say to all the people that say black Americans can't get voter ID?
I say it's really a lie. It's all on really the person. If the person really want to get their ID, they can go get it. It's nothing really stopping them.
Exactly.
Why do you think it's harder for black Americans to obtain voter ID?
Well, it's a class issue, and because of systemic racism, it's usually people of color, so black Americans.
He's like, I'm supposed to say this. I'm a white guy. I'm supposed to say this. This man sounds like he's being held hostage. Like I said, the voting suppression law in Georgia record black voter turnout, but it was supposed to. So like these people when they have their theories like, oh hey, this Georgia law is going to suppress the black vote. And then the next election after that law gets passed, you get record black vote, high black vote turnout. Your theory is debunked. Oh, okay, my theory was wrong. My assumptions was wrong there. But these people don't self-reflect. These people are not self-critical of their own ideas and their own assumptions about things that they try to explain in reality. They like wishy-washy, hand-wavy. Oh, yeah, systematic racism. That explains everything. No, it doesn't. And if what is the systemic racism you speak of? I'm still waiting for it to affect me in my life. Home ownership, I got it. 27 at the ripe old age at 27 years old. Like, my skin color is not a handicap, guys. I don't know who needs to hear it. Some black liberal. A man who believes he can and a man who believes he can't are both usually right. So if you meet a black person, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna meet it in the comment section, who's gonna come in my comment section and say, "Oh yeah, systematic racism is a thing, Kenny. Racism is a big problem in America." Okay, to you it is, but to me it's not. So if me and you both black, I don't believe racism is has much of an impact. It only impacts me from a personal level, at an individual level, and you believe it imports you at a systematic level. What's the difference between me and you? One believe, one don't believe. And if something if the effect of something changes based on who believes in it or not, couldn't you make the argument that it's merely subjective, that racism is a problem in America today? And doesn't it validate my point that I think a lot of the racism arguments is exaggerated? Huh? Because if it's systematic, it doesn't matter if I acknowledge it or not, it will still affect me, correct? But this is where a lot of these people's empirical evidence start falling on its face. They start bringing up claims about criminal justice. Oh, look, we're disproportionately in jail. Well, you disproportionately commit crimes. Is that not true? So if you disproportionately create crimes, why are you surprised that you're disproportionately in jail? It's a way of, like, it seems like nowadays racism is used as an excuse to remove accountability from black people. And I think that's not a path forward in America today. I digress. Let's get back into it.
Who are at the bottom of the socioeconomic classes, which means that they will have the most trouble, like, having to pay to go get voter ID law or voter IDs.
You motherfuckers racist as hell. Why the fuck wouldn't black people have that? What's the difference between us and you?
Do you think it's harder for black Americans to sign up online to get their voter ID?
Harder, not necessarily, but less likely, yes.
Why?
In underfunded communities due to, redlining and gerrymandering, we see that there's lower education in those specific areas, which have a high amount of, minorities. And when you're less educated, you're less likely to vote. And I think that that's what makes it so difficult for people of color to vote.
Seek help. Medical professionals are everywhere. Mental health is a priority. And yeah.
The irony is she's talking about her own people on her own political side. Ain't that something? But hey, that was just my thoughts. You heard my thoughts throughout this video. I'm sure I'll have people who agree with me. I'm sure I'll have many people who disagree with me. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Let me know what you guys are thinking. Do you think that stereotyping is inherently racist? Or you're like me, stereotyping is based on pattern recognition, but a lot of the assumption that these liberals have is based on just imagination, right? We suffer more from imagination than from reality. But hey, let me hear what you guys are thinking in the comment section. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. Peace.